Hello, welcome to the Apple Report, another session, and I'm Dr. Karen Hiltz. And this week we're going to talk about entities that are involved within the education system. Now, I'm going to provide my take based on my perspective and my opinions with regards to these entities. There's an array of entities involved in the system. As we've talked about, there's legislators who propose and get bills passed. There are departments of education at the federal level and at the state level that have a role to play and are involved. There's school boards, state school boards and local school boards. There's administrators, such as superintendent and principals and other specialty type of administrators. And then, of course, you have the teachers and the students and the parents as well. So they're all involved in the education of our children to some degree. Now, I want to focus on a couple of entities called the NEA and the AFT. They're the National Education Association and the American Federation of Teachers, NEA, AFT. Now, these entities are very much involved and wield quite a bit of power and control over the system. They are unions. They collect dues in the states that allow them to collect dues. Some states are voluntary, some aren't, some are mandatory. But these dues typically will be used for conferences and things like that. But a large portion of the dues are spent on political action. Now, they are lobbyists as well as unions, and they propose and drive legislation at the federal and the state level to support their agenda. Now, let me step back a minute and talk about unions as a general rule. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, when we were going through the Industrial Revolution, I think unions had a purpose. They did some good things. They brought more safety into the workplace. They had assurances that equipment would operate as intended and not be harmful to the operator, things of that nature. But as time has gone by, I believe unions have outlived their purpose. They really don't have much to negotiate anymore except for salaries and benefits. And if you think about increased salaries and increased benefits being what the negotiations focus on, then what does that do to the price of the good or the service that's being provided to the consumer? You and I are the consumers, and the employer doesn't graciously eat that cost. It gets passed on into the price of the good or the service. So I really believe that unions have outlived their purpose, but they will continue to push their agenda. And the agenda is to now, in my opinion, to retain the power and control they have over their customer. And this really does a disservice to their consumer, their constituents, however you want to refer to that. But let me also jump back and talk about President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Now, he was an advocate for unions back in the day, but he was an advocate for unions in the private sector. And he actually wrote a letter to a Mr. Stewart with regards to the resolution of Federation of Federal Employees Against Strikes in Federal Service. Now, he did not believe that people who work for the government, public officials, should have the right to organize and strike and participate in collective bargaining. They serve the public, and when they go do these union activities of striking and things like that, it does a disservice and a harm to the public. So that was his perspective, and this letter is from 1937. But going back to the NEA and the AFT, I believe that they wield too much power and control over the education system. Their agenda, from my perspective, is solely about power and control of the system. And they pay inordinate amounts of money to candidates to assure that their agenda is maintained. So those are two very big organizations, large in number organizations, that wield much control over the system. And from my perspective, that's a shame, because I believe that when teachers go on strike, which I don't believe they should, but they do, it is almost criminal, because they are doing such a disservice to the education of the children of our country. They are denying our children the ability to be able to learn, to become skilled and productive citizens for our communities and our nation as a whole. So there again, there are many, many entities involved with regards to the education system, but I did want to highlight my perspective with regards to there's good and bad in everything, but with regards to the unions, the NEA and the AFT, I believe they do much more of a disservice than a service in the 21st century that we are currently living in. So hopefully this was informative. I look forward to your feedback. And next week we will start talking about some of the different alternatives to traditional public education. So have a great week, and I'll talk to you next week. Thank you.